Hi everyone. So today we're going to talk about westward expansion and the movement out west, primarily focusing on building the transcontinental railroad. So the essential question for today that I want you to think about as I'm going through the lesson is, how was the transcontinental railroad a turning point in American history? So first we need to look at, well, what does the term turning point mean? Well, a turning point is any event or thing that happens that causes a huge shift in history, the past, present, future, whatever. So turning points, a lot of times we look at in terms of war. And in turning points in war, they're going to be battles, or they're going to be events that occur that cause the winners to start losing and the losers to start to win. So a shift and change. Also, turning points can be legislative laws that have been passed or pieces of legislation, or Supreme Court cases. So, for example, the Supreme Court case of Brown versus Board of Education could be considered a turning point because it desegregated public schools. And it was, according to many historians, the start of the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s. You could also look at things like the 13th Amendment, the 19th Amendment. 13th Amendment freed the slaves after the Civil War. 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. So how is the Transcontinental Railroad a huge turning point in American history? Okay, those are the standards we're going to address today. You can read those on your own. So think about, again, what comes to mind when you think of the words the West, or the term the West? So what images, what thoughts, what activities, things like that. And just think about that as we go through this as well. This video clip is a part of a larger video that goes over Manifest Destiny. But this clip focuses on analyzing this painting. So first, we need to look at what the term Manifest Destiny means. Manifest Destiny is the idea that the United States is destined by God to expand and spread democracy and capitalism across the entire North American continent. So, Manifest Destiny is this idea and this justification for this westward expansion. Basically, the U.S. government essentially used this idea as a reason to move out west. God told us we should have all of that land. We're going to possess and gain control in that land, and we're going to go all the way out west. So it is a justification for westward expansion. Okay, it's also kind of a reason to expand west. So not just saying, well, it's our God-given right, but oh, this is the reason why we have to do this, because of this manifest destiny, this promise from God for it. Okay, this video is going to talk about and analyze a little bit more about this painting and the different elements. So this woman in the middle kind of represents America in that movement west. As you can see, you've got more civilization on the east, and everybody is moving west. Native Americans are being pushed west. The buffalo, which we'll talk about, moved out west. With her, she's bringing a book, so she's going to civilize the Native Americans living in the west, as well as bring education, thoughts, ideas, so on and so forth. She's got a telegraph line in her hands, so bringing that communication from the east to the west, as well as, if you can see, the trains, the railroad that is going to link that east to west. Another good thing that they're going to talk about is how the artist really depicts this change in this movement, where it's very dark over here and very light over here. Kind of, some people can interpret that as like, oh, this is the unknown out west, or this is uncivilized and we're going to bring the light to them. Many, many different interpretations you can make. So this map is looking at the U.S. over the course of U.S. history. This video, it's about a minute long. We're just going to watch it real quick. I'm going to just talk about the different stages of American history and the different things that are going on. So we've got the 13 colonies, which is the birth of what is now the U.S. Now we have some states being formed, looking very different than they look now. More things being formed. Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of America. We're continuing to grow, and we've got these territories and states continuing to grow. We've got this area that is being disputed. The Spanish no longer control everything. Again, we're adding more territories. Look at Texas there. Now, something interesting about this is that states are going to have a voice in government. They're going to be represented. Territories, not so much. So one thing I want us to look at with this one is, well, why would we skip all this? Because until now, we're just progressively going west. So why are we going to skip all this and make Oregon and California states before all of these territories here? Well, as you can guess it, gold. Gold was discovered and we have this gold rush. And if these are states, we have control over those areas a little bit more, as well as the fact that people living there, Americans living there, also have more say-so. And they have a voice in government. They can be represented. Okay. Now we've got this Civil War era, where we're divided. Then we put Humpty Dumpty back together again with Reconstruction. And now we're continuing and continuing. And now this is really starting to look more like our current U.S. map. We bought Alaska, gained control in Hawaii, and now we have our 50 states that looks like the U.S. map of today. All right. Oops, sorry. So the West before expansion. So this area right here is called the Great Plains. The Great Plains is just a bunch of grasslands. And with the grasslands, they're very flat land, which is good for farming because you can cultivate it a lot easier. You can plow it a lot easier and plant. Unlike here in on this East Coast where it's really hilly and it's different terrain, and you go from the beach to, the hill areas to the mountains. And this is just very flat. Now, one thing about this area, though, is they've got very harsh temperatures. So dry, hot summers and very harsh winters. So it's not that favorable climate-wise. It was only settled and inhabited by Native Americans. So remember the Indian Removal Act and the Trail of Tears. Indian Removal Act moved Native Americans from the southeastern area west of the Mississippi River, which led to the Trail of Tears, which caused a huge wipeout of a large portion of the Native American population. The Native Americans that lived there, they were peaceful, but they did defend themselves when threatened. They lived off the land. They used every piece of the resources, especially the buffalo. We're going to talk about the buffalo a little more throughout the course of this Westward Expansion and Indian Wars discussion. The buffalo had many uses, and the Native Americans made use of all parts of the buffalo. So they used the buffalo for food, tools, weapons, clothing, teepee coverings, blood and religious practices, as well as storage. Okay, so not just using the buffalo for hunting. So the move west, the Transcontinental Railroad, the Union Pacific Railway Act was passed on July 1st, 1862. If you pay attention to that date, this is before the Civil War ended. And so you're probably like, well, why would they do that? And we're in the middle of the Civil War. Well, U.S. government at many times is going to do things like this as kind of like preparing for the end of this era. So we've got to have some goals. We've got to have some things that we're going to do so that when this is over, we can still progress. This act gave the Union Pacific Railroad Company the authorization to lay out, locate, construct, furnish, maintain, and enjoy a continuous railroad and telegraph. So they were responsible for all parts of this railroad. You got to find the area, lay out the track, can build it, furnish it, and maintain it. You can enjoy it, but you got to do all of that stuff, as well as the power to create the telegraph system directly adjacent to it, which we know the telegraph system is just a form of communication. So in 1869, so it took about 7 years, the Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroads came together at Promontory Point, also called Promontory Summit, Utah. And the Transcontinental Railroad is complete. It's huge because this is the first time we're connecting east to west. Turning point. The laborers who helped build the railroad, Chinese immigrants. One of the big reasons that they were brought over to help with the construction of the railroad was because the company was very impressed with how the Chinese were able to build the Great Wall of China. So if they can use all of that, then we can use what they know to help us build this huge railroad project. Chinese also helped with mining techniques as well. The Irish immigrants, German immigrants, former soldiers of the Union and Confederate armies, as well as freed slaves helped to build this railroad. So here's a map just looking at where the railroad goes. So the Central Pacific Railroad goes from California to Utah. Union Pacific goes from Iowa, so bringing that East Coast to Utah. And the two meet at Promontory Point, remember also called Promontory Summit, Utah. So the move west. The Homestead Act is passed on May 20th of 1862. The government offered 160 acres of free land to settlers who were willing to move out west to this Great Plains area. The settlers did have to, though, live there for 5 years, as well as make the land useful and profitable, improve the land. That means farming, building towns, just populating the area. The land became theirs after they have met these terms and paid a small fee, but overall the land itself was free. So why was the Homestead Act passed before the Pacific Railway Act? So you got to think about it. Pacific Railway Act was passed in July of 1862. Homestead Act was passed in May. So first you have to give, so one answer to this question would be you have to give an incentive to go out west. So there's got to be a reason. Well, here's your reason. We're going to give you all this free land. You just got to live there and do the same things over here, the same thing there that you were doing over here. And then once you give them an incentive, bam, now you have a way to get out there. And because this takes quite a few years to build, you can continue to give people that incentive and that reason to move out west. All right, so today's assignment, you are going to do a reading assignment for today through Common Lit. And this should already be in your Google Classroom. And you're just going to read this document and answer a few guiding questions. So let's switch really quickly to Common Lit, and I'll show you what it looks like. So here's what it's going to look sort of like when you get here. So this reading is on Manifest Destiny, and so there's some really cool features on Common Lit that I wanted to show you that may help you find more success in this activity. So you can change the font size, okay? You can also use the read aloud function. So like you saw, once I clicked on read aloud, it opened up all of these speaker icons. And you just click on those speaker icons and it'll read that section to you out loud. Another cool feature is that it will translate, and not just to a couple of languages, to a whole bunch of different languages. Okay, so it'll translate it to different languages. So let's see, Spanish was the one on here. Where is it? Move my head out of the way. So you can translate it to Spanish, and all you have to do is click the little world icon and it'll translate the text into Spanish for you, or whatever language you choose. Another cool feature is you can use the annotation tool. And so what you can do is you can highlight and annotate. So you pick this section. So I highlighted this, and I can either choose to add an annotation where I add some notes to the side. Done. Okay. Or I'm going to delete that. Another thing I can do is highlight this, and I can literally highlight it in different colors. Okay. Another really cool feature is that you can, so if you look, there's numbers beside certain words. It helps, if you click on the number, it'll give you the definition or explain what Indochina is, because Indochina doesn't exist anymore, so on and so forth. And you see where it says Q1, Q2, so there's 6 questions in all, and when you click through them, then you can go in and answer the questions. If I were you, I would look at the questions before I start answering. So you just answer these guided questions, and that is the assignment for today.